According to the Attorney General, Robert Mueller did not find that the Trump campaign conspired with Russia to disrupt the 2016 election, did not find evidence that established that. The special counsel didn't come to any conclusions one way or the other about whether the president committed obstruction of justice. Instead, evidence was presented on both sides, and the decision was left to two individuals who are not exactly disinterested in the matter. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who wrote the letter giving the president a pretext to fire then FBI Director James Comey, and Attorney General William Barr, who appeared to audition for the job he now has by writing a memo last year arguing that Mueller's theory of obstruction was, quote, fatally misconceived. That's whose judgment we're now being asked to accept at face value without getting to see any of the underlying evidence. For more on the questions raised by Barr's collusion, I'm joined by MSNBC legal analyst Neal Katyal, former acting Solicitor General under President Obama, who wrote the special counsel rules back in 1999. He has a new op-ed in the New York Times, The Many Problems with the Barr Letter. Let me start with this one. What do you think of the decision to not make a determination, and is that then the Attorney General's role to make it for him?
I don't think it's the Attorney General's role. So yesterday, if you read Donald Trump's tweets, you'd think, oh, this report by Mueller clears Trump of any wrongdoing. And that is not what the Barr letter, we don't have the Mueller report, but the Barr letter even says. With respect to obstruction of justice, Mueller basically couldn't decide. He said he laid out the evidence on both sides. Now, Barr then takes it on himself and inserts himself into the process and says, oh, I'll decide. Now, it's not at all clear that Mueller wanted that result. Indeed, if Mueller thought that the Attorney General should decide this matter, I suspect that would be in the report and be one of the very first things Barr would have quoted, since that letter of 4 pages was really an advocacy document yesterday. But we saw nothing like that. So I think Barr put himself in this process. I have no indication whatsoever that Mueller wanted that result. And the result is a really scary one. The idea that you can have a 22-month independent investigation and in a matter of 48 hours have that just cut short with an Attorney General who says, oh, I don't see anything there.
We should note that he says he was briefed on that part of it 3 weeks ago. That's the word from the Department of Justice, and that they've been making that decision for a while.
That's not in the letter. They've been leaking that today, that they knew about 3 weeks ago, Mueller's conclusion that he wasn't going to reach a conclusion. Well, that's really nice. All that meant is that, they knew that. There's no indication, even in these leaks, that they had all the evidence and the like. And so, here Barr says in his letter, I see no evidence that Trump had a corrupt intent, and therefore there's no obstruction of justice violation. Now, I don't know how quickly he was able to review all of the reams of evidence, but the one thing I do know is that they didn't interview Donald Trump about this. And any reasonable prosecutor, I think, when faced with the question, does someone have corrupt intent, the first question is the first thing you do is go ask that someone.
Well, maybe I'm dumb here, but the weird thing about the whole structure to me is this. We've been talking forever about what the OLC guidelines about it say indicting a sitting president, which is it says you can't do it. We've largely, I think people think that Mueller would follow those guidelines. The question is, what's even the determination being made here, right? I mean, if the Department of Justice can't indict a sitting president and they say, we don't know if he committed the crime of obstruction of justice or not, there's evidence both for and against, what is the Attorney General's role in making the determination one way or the other? Had he found the other way, then what does that even amount to constitutionally?
Exactly. It's a great question. I think there's basically two ambiguities, and we don't know because we don't have the Mueller report to decide between them. One is this question about whether or not a sitting president could be indicted influenced Mueller's thinking. The Barr letter said it didn't influence him, but for Mueller, you could see him saying, look, obstruction of justice is a crime. I can't indict a president of a crime under these OLC opinions. Therefore, I'm leaving it up to Congress, not the Attorney General. Is that in the Mueller report? We don't know. That's a crucial question because it'll guide how the next months should unfold. The second thing is, has the Office of Legal Counsel at the Justice Department effectively given the president a get-out-of-jail-free card, not on the can't indict a sitting president, but the bizarre interpretations of criminal statutes that William Barr laid out in that 19-page ridiculous memo last summer? And, so even if they put aside the question of whether a sitting president could be indicted. They haven't put aside this ridiculous Barr theory, and it does look like that's part of what's going on in this 4-page letter.
I mean, it does also seem in the terms of precedent, right? I mean, when articles of impeachment have been drafted against the last two articles of impeachment, both included obstruction of justice as one of the impeachable offenses. And in both those cases, that's a determination that Congress made. It wasn't a determination that someone of the DOJ made.
Chris, you're 100% right. In both those cases, the special prosecutor, both Jaworski in the Nixon case and Starr in the Clinton case, expressly refused to decide whether or not there was enough evidence for obstruction. They said that's a call for Congress to make. And here you've got the Attorney General jumping into the process in a way that hasn't been done historically before. It really, I think, smells bad, and I think we need to see the Mueller report to know just how bad this is.
Yeah, there's also this question, too, I had when I was reading about, the evidence being, difficult questions. What it says is the report sets out evidence on both sides of the question, leaves unresolved what the special counsel views as difficult issues of law and fact concerning whether the president's actions and intent could be viewed as obstruction. One of the questions there is there's a lot of reporting on this, right? A lot of publicly known things. My question reading is like, well, what are those other things? Like, is it just that what we publicly saw presents difficult questions of law and fact, which they do, or was there other stuff they found out in the course of doing this?
Yeah, so there's indication in the Barr letter yesterday. He says, look, I reviewed the evidence about obstruction of justice. Some of that's public, some of it's not. And then he says there's evidence on both sides that Mueller found. We don't know what that those non-public actions are. That's yet another reason why, we're so in the dark at this point, and it is outrageous that the president goes on air and his press secretary and says total exoneration and stuff like that. If it is a total exoneration, then they should be the first ones to say, let us see the report. Yep. Before they had this argument, oh, it's a witch hunt and so on. But now all of a sudden they've said, no, Mueller's great. The president said he's an honorable man. They've said the investigation worked the way it should. If that's the case, let the American public see the report, decide for themselves. I'd love to close the chapter on this book as much as anyone, but the only way to close that is to actually know what happened.
All right. Thank you, Neal Katyal.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.